Captain Nathaniel Ward had been traveling through the galaxy for years, exploring unknown planets and making contact with alien species. But even he had never expected to find what he discovered on this uncharted world. The planet was desolate, a barren landscape of cracked, dry earth. Dust swirled in the air, and the sky above was a dull gray, as if it had forgotten how to be blue. Nathaniel's ship, the Endeavor, hovered above the surface, its engines humming softly. He had detected an unusual signal coming from the planet's surface, a distress call, faint but unmistakable. He couldn't ignore it. It was his duty as an explorer to investigate, and so he descended. The land below was silent, save for the whisper of wind. The wreckage of an alien ship lay scattered across the ground, half buried in the sand. Its metallic hull was scorched and riddled with holes, as though it had been torn apart in battle. There was no sign of life. The ship had clearly crashed, long ago. Nathaniel cautiously stepped off the ship, his boots crunching on the dusty ground. He made his way toward the wreckage, his hand resting on the blaster at his side, just in case. As he approached the ship, a strange feeling crept over him. Something was not right. He could sense a presence, something alive, somewhere nearby. Then a faint groan broke the silence. Nathaniel froze. His heart raced as he scanned the wreckage for any signs of movement. He stepped forward, carefully making his way around twisted metal and broken parts of the ship. And there, just behind a jagged piece of the hull, he found them. Two alien sisters, barely conscious, lying on the ground. Their bodies were frail, their skin pale and streaked with dirt. One of them had long silver hair that shimmered even in the dull light, while the other had short, dark locks. They were clearly in bad shape, their bodies wasting away from hunger and exhaustion. Their breathing was shallow, and their eyes fluttered open when they sensed his presence. Nathaniel's instincts kicked in. He knelt beside them, quickly assessing their condition. Both sisters had wounds, scratches, bruises, and burns from the crash. But it was their weak state that worried him the most. They were starving. He could see their ribs through their thin clothing, and their faces were gaunt, hollow from lack of food. He looked around, but there was nothing in the wreckage that could help. He had to act quickly. "I'm here to help," he said softly, his voice calm but urgent. He wasn't sure if they could understand him, but his tone was meant to comfort them. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." The sister with silver hair blinked weakly, her eyes locking onto his. A spark of recognition, or maybe hope, flickered in her gaze, but it quickly faded as she closed her eyes again, unable to stay conscious. Nathaniel didn't waste any time. He stood up and rushed back to his ship. In the cargo hold, he had emergency rations, food packs designed to sustain someone for days in harsh environments. He grabbed a few along with a med kit and hurried back to the wreckage. When he returned to the sisters, he was relieved to see that they had not moved, still lying there as if waiting for something. He knelt again, this time pulling open one of the food packs. It was a simple, tasteless substance, but it would nourish them. He gently placed a small portion near their mouths and waited. The sister with dark hair stirred first. She made a faint, soft noise as she began to regain some awareness. Nathaniel's heart sank as he saw her struggle to lift her hand. She was too weak to feed herself. With great care, Nathaniel used his own hand to guide her fingers to the food. Slowly, she managed to take a bite. It was a small victory, but it was enough. The other sister, the one with silver hair, remained still for a moment longer, her breathing steady but shallow. Nathaniel moved to her side, offering the same food. To his surprise, she opened her eyes and weakly reached for it. Her hand trembled, but she managed to eat. As they ate, Nathaniel worked quickly to apply bandages to their wounds and check their vitals. His medical training was basic, but it was enough to stabilize them for now. He had no idea how long they had been stranded on this planet, but it was clear they had suffered greatly. "I'm Captain Nathaniel Ward," he introduced himself once they were both somewhat alert. "I'm from Earth, a long way from here. You're safe now." The sisters exchanged a glance, though it was clear they didn't have the strength to respond. The one with silver hair gave him a weak smile, but it was filled with a sadness that Nathaniel couldn't ignore. "Where are you from?" he asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. He needed to know more about them, their people, their story. The sister with dark hair shifted slightly, her eyes cloudy as though struggling to focus. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. Instead, she closed her eyes again, exhausted from the small effort. Nathaniel watched them in silence, wondering what had happened to them, what had led to their crash, and, more importantly, why they had been so close to death. He stayed with them for hours, keeping watch as they rested, ensuring they were as comfortable as possible. Slowly, the sisters recovered. Their breathing grew steadier and the color returned to their cheeks. But still, they didn't speak. By nightfall, the sisters were finally able to sit up, though they were still weak. Nathaniel gave them more food and water, and they ate silently. He tried again to ask them where they were from, but they only exchanged quiet glances. They weren't ready to tell him yet. Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their story than they were letting on. They had been through something terrible, something that had almost destroyed them, but he had no idea what it was. As the night sky above them darkened, Nathaniel made a decision. He would help them. Whatever it took, he would see them safe. "I'm not leaving until you're both well again," he said, more to himself than to them. The sisters didn't respond. They only rested, still too exhausted to say anything. But in that moment, Nathaniel realized that his simple act of kindness had set something much larger into motion, something he couldn't yet understand. And as the stars flickered overhead, Nathaniel wondered what the sisters might offer him in return for saving their lives. Days passed, and the sisters' condition steadily improved under Nathaniel's care. Their physical strength returned, though they were still weak. They spent their time resting, and every now and then, Nathaniel would ask them about their past. But they remained quiet, almost as if the memories were too painful to share. Their silence was heavy, and Nathaniel knew that something had happened to them, something that went far beyond their crash landing on this barren planet. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape, the sister with silver hair, Lyra, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried an air of quiet determination. We owe you our lives," she said, her gaze fixed on the dying light in the distance. "And we will repay you, but there is more to our story, Nathaniel. Much more." Nathaniel sat down beside her, giving her his full attention. He had known they were hiding something, and now it seemed they were finally ready to share. "Tell me," he said gently. "What happened? How did you end up here?" Lyra hesitated, her eyes flickering as if searching for the right words. Her sister, Tessa, lay nearby, staring at the sky, though she too seemed alert, waiting for her sister's words. "We come from the Zathari system," Lyra began. "Our homeworld was once a peaceful place, filled with advanced technology and culture, but that all changed when the warlord arrived." Nathaniel listened intently, his heart sinking as he realized that this was no ordinary story. These sisters had been caught in something much larger than a simple crash. "The warlord," Lyra continued, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and grief, "came from another galaxy. He came with his fleet, his army of ruthless soldiers. They destroyed everything, our cities, our people, our way of life. He killed our parents and forced us to flee." Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists as he listened to the pain in Lyra's voice. He couldn't imagine the terror they had lived through, losing everything they had ever known. "Why did he do it?" Nathaniel asked, his voice filled with a mix of anger and curiosity. "What did he want?" Lyra's gaze hardened, her eyes narrowing as if the very thought of the warlord caused her pain. "He wants power. He wants to conquer the galaxy, to rule it all, and he is willing to destroy entire worlds to do it." Tessa, who had been silent up until now, sat up, her face filled with quiet fury. "He will stop at nothing," she added. "We were forced to leave everything behind, but we still carry the weight of what he took from us." Nathaniel could feel the weight of their words. These sisters were not just survivors, they were part of a larger struggle. They had lost everything, and now they sought revenge. And it seemed they were asking for his help. "Are you saying you want me to help you fight him?" Nathaniel asked slowly, still processing everything they had shared. He had been ready to help them, but this was different. They were asking him to join their fight, a fight that could be bigger than anything he had ever faced. Lyra nodded solemnly. "We have to stop him. He's gathering an army, expanding his control across the galaxy. We can't do it alone, but together we have a chance. You've already saved our lives, Nathaniel. You've given us hope again, and for that we will repay you. But we need your help to defeat him." Nathaniel paused, considering the gravity of their request. Helping them had already been more than he had expected, but now it seemed he had been brought into something much larger. He had always dreamed of adventure, of exploring the stars, but this was not the kind of adventure he had imagined. But there was something about these sisters, the way they spoke, the fire in their eyes, that made him believe in their cause. He could see that they were not just asking for help. They were asking for a partner, someone who could stand with them against the darkness that had destroyed their lives. "All right," Nathaniel said, his voice steady. "I'll help you. We'll stop him. Together." Lyra's eyes softened, a flicker of gratitude crossing her face. "Thank you, Nathaniel. You don't know how much this means to us." Tessa nodded, her expression firm. "We're not just asking you to fight. We're asking you to stand with us, to become part of something bigger than all of us." Nathaniel felt a surge of determination. He was not just a stranger anymore, not just someone who had happened to find them in the middle of nowhere. He was part of their mission, and he was ready to help them take down the warlord who had destroyed so much. But there was one thing that still troubled him. "How do we defeat him?" Nathaniel asked, his brow furrowing. "We don't even know where he is, or how strong he really is." Lyra smiled faintly, a mysterious glint in her eyes. "We have a way," she said, "but it's not something we can do without great sacrifice. We have powers. Powers that were passed down through our people for generations. But those powers come at a cost. We can't do it alone." Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "Powers? What kind of powers?" Tessa leaned forward, her voice serious. "We can manipulate time, just a little bit. We can slow it down, speed it up, even glimpse into the future. But it's dangerous. We have to be careful with how we use it. If we overuse our powers, we risk losing control." Nathaniel stared at them, his mind racing. Manipulating time? It sounded impossible, but he had already seen things he couldn't explain. The sisters weren't ordinary beings. They were something far beyond the norm. "And you think these powers can stop the warlord?" Nathaniel asked, still trying to make sense of it all. Lyra nodded. "Yes, but we need you, Nathaniel. We need you to help us gather the strength we need. And once we have that strength, we will strike. We will make him pay for what he's done." Nathaniel's resolve grew stronger. The stakes were higher than ever before, and the path ahead was uncertain. But he knew one thing. He couldn't turn back now. "I'm in," he said, his voice unwavering. Let's take him down." The sisters exchanged a look, and for the first time since their rescue, they smiled. There was hope in their eyes, a hope that had been lost for so long, now rekindled by Nathaniel's promise. And with that promise, they began their journey toward a future filled with uncertainty, danger, and the chance to finally take back what had been stolen from them. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and training. Nathaniel, Lyra, and Tessa spent most of their time in the Endeavor, the human ship that had become their new home. They were on a mission now, one that went beyond survival and into the realm of revenge. But as the sisters taught Nathaniel the secrets of their powers, the bond between them grew deeper, and a quiet trust formed that neither of them had expected. At first, Nathaniel had only agreed to help them out of a sense of duty, but now he felt something else stirring inside him. They were no longer just survivors. They were his partners in a fight he never imagined he would be a part of. And in the moments of stillness between their lessons and planning, he could see that they had become more than just the strangers he had rescued from a crashed ship. They were two individuals, strong, determined, and united by a cause that consumed them. The sisters were teaching him to use the very powers that had given them the strength to survive. They could manipulate time, but only in small, controlled ways. At first, it seemed like magic to Nathaniel, but after several weeks of practice, he began to understand the discipline that went into controlling such power. Lyra was the more patient of the two. She spent hours teaching Nathaniel how to focus, his mind, how to feel the flow of time around him. She told him that the ability to bend time didn't come from force, it came from connection. "You have to listen," she explained, her silver hair glowing softly in the ship's low light. "You have to feel the rhythm of the world around you. It's like breathing. If you fight it, you will fail. But if you trust yourself and trust the power, it will obey." Nathaniel was not sure he fully understood, but he followed her instructions carefully. He spent hours sitting in the ship's quiet chamber, focusing on nothing but the ticking of time, the rise and fall of his breath. Slowly, he began to notice small changes. Objects seemed to move in slow motion at times, and other times they sped up. It wasn't much, but it was enough for him to feel like he was starting to grasp the power. Tessa, on the other hand, was more direct. She didn't have the same calm patience as Lyra. She was quick to act, quick to teach, and even quicker to push Nathaniel to his limits. Her lessons were less about control and more about instinct. "Time isn't a thing to control," she would say with a smirk. "It's a force, and if you want to use it, you have to fight with it, not against it." At first, Nathaniel struggled with Tessa's more aggressive approach. He wasn't used to the intensity she demanded. But as the days passed, he realized that her way was just as effective as Lyra's. In fact, it taught him to act quickly, to think without hesitation, and to rely on his instincts. Together, the two sisters formed a balance of teaching that helped him grow stronger each day. Despite the grueling training, there were moments of lightness. After every long session, the three of them would gather in the ship's mess hall and share a meal. The food wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going. Lyra and Tessa often joked about their past, about the things they had left behind, on their home world, the things they missed the most. Sometimes Nathaniel would laugh along with them, though he could feel the sadness in their words. They were not just warriors, they were sisters, and the bond they shared was something deep and unspoken. One evening, as the stars stretched out before them, Nathaniel sat outside the ship, gazing up at the night sky. It reminded him of Earth, the place he had left behind. He had joined the expedition to explore new worlds, to find something greater than himself. But now, he found himself entangled in a war that wasn't his own, fighting for people he had only just met. He didn't mind, though. There was something about their cause that felt right, something that made him believe in the possibility of victory, even if the odds were against them. Lyra joined him outside, sitting down beside him. "It's hard to imagine a world without war," she said quietly, her eyes scanning the stars. "Where I'm from, we were always at peace, always striving for something greater. But the warlord, he destroyed it all. He took everything from us." Nathaniel nodded, not sure what to say. He understood the pain of loss. He had lost family, friends, even his home planet in his travels. But there was something about Lyra's sadness that felt different. She wasn't just mourning the loss of her world. She was mourning the loss of a future she and her people had dreamed of. "We'll make him pay," Nathaniel said, his voice steady, though there was a fire in his words now that hadn't been there before. "He won't get away with it. Not while I'm here." Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming with something deeper than gratitude. "You've already given us so much, Nathaniel, more than we ever expected." They sat in silence for a long time, both of them lost in their thoughts. Nathaniel felt the weight of their journey, of their shared struggle. He had always thought of himself as an explorer, someone who sought adventure in the stars. But now he realized that this, helping the sisters, standing with them, was his true purpose. It was no longer about exploration. It was about justice and revenge and hope. Tessa joined them after a while, her presence as sharp and bold as always. "We've got work to do," she said, her voice full of urgency. "No more waiting. It's time to act." Nathaniel stood up, ready to follow her. He wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, he would face it with the sisters by his side. Together they were strong. Together they would stop the warlord and restore balance to the galaxy. As they walked back toward the Endeavor, Nathaniel could feel the bond between them growing stronger. It wasn't just about their mission anymore. It was about something deeper, something that connected them all. He was no longer just a man helping two strangers. He was part of their family, part of their fight, and he would see it through. To the end, the warlord had taken everything from them. But now, they were coming for him, and nothing would stop them. The journey to the warlord's stronghold was not an easy one. The trio spent weeks traveling through unknown star systems, crossing treacherous terrain, and avoiding the warlord's search parties. They had to be careful. Every move they made was critical. The sisters had taught Nathaniel much about their enemy, but nothing could prepare him for what awaited them when they finally reached the warlord's fortress. The stronghold was located on a rocky moon, hidden deep in the shadows of a gas giant. It was surrounded by a vast field of debris, remnants of countless ships that had failed to breach the stronghold's defenses. The warlord's fleet was powerful, and anyone who dared to approach his domain often didn't return. Nathaniel's heart raced as they approached in the Endeavor, the massive fortress looming in the distance. Lyra and Tessa had told him that the warlord's army was unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't just made up of soldiers. It was made up of conquerors, people who had been forcibly taken from their worlds and twisted into loyal servants. Their loyalty to the warlord came not from choice, but from fear and control. The sisters' people were among those he had enslaved, and they weren't the only ones. As they approached the moon, the Endeavor dropped below the fortress's radar. The sisters used their powers to manipulate the flow of time just enough to avoid detection, making their ship invisible to the warlord's sensors. Nathaniel could feel the tension in the air. This was no longer a mission for survival. This was a mission for justice. Lyra and Tessa stood at the front of the ship, their eyes focused on the looming fortress. "We'll have to fight our way in," Lyra said, her voice steady. "The defenses are heavy, but we can't wait much longer. The longer we wait, the more soldiers he'll have." Nathaniel nodded, understanding the urgency. He had been through dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. The warlord was not just an enemy. He was a tyrant who had taken everything from the sisters. And now, it was time to stop him. Tessa turned to Nathaniel, her eyes fierce. "You're ready for this, right? We can't afford to hesitate." "I'm ready," Nathaniel replied, his voice firm. He had learned a lot from the sisters, not just about their powers, but about their strength. They had already been through so much, and now it was his turn to help them finish what they had started. The Endeavor slid into the shadow of the fortress, landing softly on the moon's rocky surface. They had arrived. Nathaniel's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared for what was next. The sisters led the way, their movements swift and silent. They were experienced in the art of infiltration, and they knew exactly what to do. They made their way through a series of tunnels beneath the fortress, moving carefully and staying out of sight. The warlord's forces were everywhere, and they had to be careful. But despite the danger, Nathaniel couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose. He was no longer just an outsider. He was part of something bigger, a mission that could change the fate of entire worlds. As they neared the central chamber, where the warlord was rumored to be hiding, the air grew tense. Lyra and Tessa's powers were more pronounced now, and Nathaniel could feel the subtle shifts in time around them. It was both fascinating and unnerving. The sisters' abilities were growing stronger the closer they got to the warlord, and Nathaniel realized that they were preparing for something massive. "We have to be ready," Lyra said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "Once we enter the chamber, there's no turning back. The warlord will be waiting for us." Tessa clenched her fists. "We've come this far. We're not turning back now." They entered the chamber with quiet determination, the massive doors sliding open to reveal the warlord's throne room. The room was vast, filled with cold stone and harsh lighting. At the far end of the room stood the warlord, his figure towering and imposing, his dark armor gleaming under the harsh lights. He was surrounded by his guards, warriors who had been twisted by his power, their faces blank and expressionless. The warlord turned to face them, a cold smile forming on his lips. "So, the sisters have come to die," he sneered. "And you, human, you are nothing but a pawn in their game. You cannot stop me." Nathaniel felt a chill run down his spine. The warlord's presence was suffocating, his confidence radiating from him. But Nathaniel didn't hesitate. He knew that this was the moment they had been waiting for. The sisters stepped forward, their eyes locked on the warlord. "You took everything from us," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with anger. "And now, you will pay." Tessa raised her hand, and Nathaniel felt the shift in time once again. The air around them seemed to slow as the sisters prepared to strike. The warlord's guards moved to attack, but the sisters were faster. They moved with blinding speed, their powers allowing them to dodge and weave through the guards with ease. Nathaniel stood back, watching in awe as the sisters fought with a grace and power that he had never seen before. But the warlord was not, unprepared. He raised his hand, and Nathaniel felt a wave of darkness sweep over the room. The warlord's powers were immense, and his presence seemed to distort the very air around them. He had control over more than just his army. He had control over the very forces of nature. The battle intensified. Time seemed to stretch and bend, the sisters pushing their powers to their limits. Nathaniel could see the strain on their faces, but they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. Then, with a final powerful movement, Lyra and Tessa unleashed their full power. The air around them shattered as time itself fractured, sending a wave of energy through the room. The warlord staggered back, his defenses failing for the first time in years. He looked at the sisters in disbelief, but it was too late. The battle had been won. The warlord staggered back, his dark armor reflecting the flickering lights of the throne room. He looked at the sisters with disbelief in his eyes, as though he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. His massive form, once so confident and imposing, now seemed fragile in the wake of their combined power. Lyra and Tessa stood side by side, their breathing heavy but steady. The strain of using their abilities was visible in the way their shoulders heaved, but neither of them faltered. Nathaniel stood behind them, watching with wide eyes as the battle reached its climax. He had never seen anything like it. The sisters had unlocked a power within themselves that was truly beyond his understanding. "You think this is over?" the warlord growled, his voice low and menacing. He raised his hand, and a pulse of dark energy erupted from his palm, slamming into the ground. The room shook as his power flared, but the sisters were not so easily deterred. They had faced him before in their minds, in their dreams, and now they faced him for real. Lyra's voice was calm but filled with fierce resolve. "It's over for you. You've destroyed too many lives. You've taken too much." Tessa, her face set in a determined expression, stepped forward. "We're here to end it." The warlord's laughter echoed through the chamber, dark and hollow. "You think you can defeat me? You're nothing but children playing with fire. Do you even understand the power you wield? The cost of what you've done?" The sisters exchanged a glance, silent for a moment. Nathaniel could feel the weight of the warlord's words, but there was no turning back now. They had come this far. The sisters had already paid a heavy price for their abilities, but now they were determined to end the cycle of destruction the warlord had set in motion. Lyra took a step forward, her eyes never leaving the warlord. "We understand more than you think. You've taken everything from us, our family, our home, our future. But now we're taking it back." With a sharp movement, Lyra raised her hand, and time itself seemed to shift. The room darkened, and Nathaniel felt an intense pressure build up in the air around them. It was as though time had frozen, the seconds stretching and bending as the sisters prepared their final strike. The warlord seemed to sense it too, his eyes narrowing as he tried to fight against the time-bending force the sisters had unleashed. In that moment, Nathaniel saw the truth. He understood why the sisters had kept their powers hidden for so long. Their abilities were not just tools of war. They were a part of them, something ancient and powerful passed down through generations. But with that power came sacrifice. Every time they used it, they paid a price. And now, they were paying it once again. The warlord, realizing the danger he was in, tried to retaliate, summoning a powerful blast of energy, but it was too late. Lyra and Tessa combined their powers, and the energy rippled through the room in a wave of blinding light. Time itself shattered around them as the warlord's dark influence crumbled. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, the warlord's immense form collapsed, his body falling to the ground with a heavy thud. His forces, once loyal and controlled, now scattered in confusion and defeat. Nathaniel stood there, breathless, as the echoes of the battle faded. He looked at the sisters, who were now kneeling, exhausted, but victorious. Their powers had done what no army could. They had broken the warlord's hold on the galaxy, and in doing so, they had freed countless people from his reign of terror. But Nathaniel could see the toll it had taken on them. Their bodies were trembling, their faces pale from the effort. The power they had wielded had drained them, and he knew that they would need time to recover. Lyra, her voice barely a whisper, spoke first. "We did it. He's gone." Tessa nodded, her eyes weary but filled with a quiet satisfaction. "It's over," but Nathaniel could see the sadness in their eyes. The warlord's defeat had not brought them the peace they had hoped for. There was no celebration, no triumph, only the weight of what they had lost and the cost of their victory. "Are you all right?" Nathaniel asked softly, kneeling beside them. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "We'll be fine. We've been through worse. But this victory isn't just ours. It belongs to everyone he hurt. Nathaniel nodded. He understood now. The sisters' journey had never been about personal gain. It had been about something much bigger. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for all the lives the warlord had destroyed. And in the end, their struggle had paid off. But Nathaniel also knew that their journey wasn't over. The galaxy would need healing. The warlord's empire had crumbled, but the damage he had caused would take time to repair. And the sisters, despite their victory, would still need time to recover from the strain of their powers. As they made their way back to the Endeavor, Nathaniel's mind raced. He had been part of something much larger than himself, something that had changed the course of history. But it wasn't just the galaxy that had changed. He had changed too. He had learned the true meaning of sacrifice, of fighting for something greater than himself. And he had come to realize that sometimes the greatest battles were not fought with weapons, but with the strength of the heart. As the Endeavor lifted off from the warlord's shattered fortress, Nathaniel looked at the sisters one last time. They had faced impossible odds, and they had won. But he could see that their journey wasn't over. They had done what they set out to do, but there would always be more battles, more challenges ahead. For now, though, they could rest. For now, they had won. The stars outside the Endeavor shimmered like diamonds in the endless void of space, but inside the ship, there was a heavy silence. Nathaniel sat alone in the cockpit, looking out at the galaxy he had come to know so well. It was strange. How? Everything had changed so quickly. Just days ago, he had been a simple explorer, a traveler of the stars. But now, he was part of something much bigger, a battle that had shaped the fate of entire worlds. He glanced over at the sisters, who were resting in the back of the ship, recovering from the battle. Lyra and Tessa had both been drained by the effort of defeating the warlord. Their bodies were exhausted, their powers temporarily spent. But despite the toll it had taken on them, there was a sense of peace in the air. The galaxy was free. The warlord was gone. But at what cost? Nathaniel couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for the sisters. They had given so much, and yet their victory had come at a price. They had used their powers to defeat the warlord, but the power they wielded was not without consequence. It was a gift that came with a cost, one that had taken something from them every time they used it. Now, as they rested, Nathaniel knew that their struggle wasn't over. They had won this battle, but the fight for the future was just beginning. He stood up from the cockpit and made his way to the back of the ship where the sisters lay. They looked peaceful in their rest. But Nathaniel knew better. They were always carrying the weight of their past, the memories of the warlord's cruelty and the loss of their homeworld. It was a weight they would carry with them forever. No matter how many victories they achieved. Lyra stirred first, her silver hair falling around her face as she opened her eyes. She smiled faintly when she saw Nathaniel standing beside her. "You're still awake?" she asked softly, her voice tired but warm. Nathaniel nodded. "I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about everything, about how much has changed." Tessa, who had been resting beside Lyra, opened her eyes as well. "I don't blame you for not being able to sleep," she said with a quiet laugh. "We've been through a lot." The two sisters sat up, their movements slow but steady. Lyra's eyes met Nathaniel's, and for the first time he saw something he hadn't noticed before. An unspoken bond between the three of them. They weren't just allies, they were family now, bound together by their shared struggle, their shared pain, and their shared victory. "We couldn't have done it without you, Nathaniel," Lyra said, her voice sincere. "You were the one who believed in us when we had nothing left. You didn't hesitate to help, even when you didn't fully understand what we were fighting for." Tessa nodded in agreement. "We've lost so much, but you've given us something we never thought we'd have again. Hope. Hope for a future where our people can live in peace." Nathaniel felt a lump form in his throat. He had only joined their fight out of a sense of duty, but now he realized that it had become more than that. He had fought alongside them, not just for the galaxy, but for the people they had lost. He had helped them achieve the impossible, and in doing so, he had found a sense of purpose he had never known before. "I'm glad I could help," Nathaniel said quietly. "But it wasn't just me. It was all of us. We did this together." The sisters exchanged a glance, and for a moment, the room was filled with an understanding that went beyond words. They had all given something in this fight. They had all sacrificed in some way. But now, as they looked toward the future, they knew that their journey was far from over. "We've won this battle," Lyra said, her voice stronger now. "But there's still so much to do. The galaxy is free from the warlord's control, but there are many who still suffer. We can't just walk away from that." Tessa nodded. "The warlord may be gone, but his empire still leaves scars across the galaxy. There are worlds that need rebuilding, people who need help. We can't rest until we've helped them heal." Nathaniel understood. The battle had been won, but the war wasn't over. There were still many challenges ahead, many lives to rebuild. The sisters had freed the galaxy from the warlord's grip, but there was still much to be done. And he would be there, by their side, to help them through it. "Where do we go from here?" Nathaniel asked, his voice filled with determination. Lyra smiled, a glint of hope in her eyes. "We go where we're needed. We rebuild. We heal. We help those who are still suffering. And we keep fighting for a better future." The sisters stood, their strength slowly returning as they prepared to continue their journey. Nathaniel stood with them, knowing that their fight was far from over. They had won a victory, but there were still many battles to fight. The galaxy needed them, and they wouldn't rest until they had helped every corner of it recover from the damage that had been done. As the Endeavor drifted through space, Nathaniel couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had been a part of something greater than he had ever imagined. He had helped 2 alien sisters defeat a tyrant, and in doing so, he had become part of their family. Together, they would continue their journey, one filled with uncertainty, but also filled with hope. The hope that, no matter the challenges ahead, they would always stand together. And as the stars stretched out before them, Nathaniel realized that, despite the hardships and the sacrifices, they had won. They had taken back their future, and now they would shape it together.